Welcome, everyone. This is Discover the Hidden Trauma of Your Client's Self-Sabotaging Pattern and How to Stop It Now. Tonight in this webinar, we're going to help you with a few specific things. We're going to help you to get clear on how your clients sabotage their own success and their own progress. Discover 5 hidden survival energy trauma patterns. Recognize how to respond rather than to react to somebody that's in a defensive trauma pattern. Going to acquire 5 ways to help them out of the pain of this pattern and share why we're so passionate about this topic. And at the very end, we're going to take a few minutes to explain our professional certification program, which is a path to master these skills so that your clients have consistent and successful outcomes. So first, I'd just like for you to imagine for a moment. Imagine how effective your professional practice would be if you knew how the charge of your client's hidden trauma pattern impacted themselves and others. Now, we call it hidden because it's usually subconscious. It's not understood by our conscious mind. And these self-sabotaging behaviors or patterns are rooted in what we call the survival energy patterns. But what exactly is a survival energy pattern? The pattern of energy flow your mind-body physiology automatically reverts to when you feel consciously or subconsciously overwhelmed. It's an automatic body-based reaction that acts as a buffer to manage overwhelm, and it's usually not relevant in the present moment. Now, we learn these defensive patterns when we're young, and we use them so often that it becomes a habit. Then we automatically react with these patterns from the past, even if it's not helpful or relevant in the present moment. And we do need defense, right? There sometimes are dangerous things that we have to defend against. We need to feel safe in our body. We need to feel safe in the environment, and we need to be safe in relationship with other people. Feeling safe in a relationship with others is absolutely a requirement for health and well-being. So we are wired to defend, and we are wired to connect. The autonomic nervous system alerts us to physical danger and moves us into fight, flight, or freeze physiology so we can deal with any kind of threat to ourself or to our relationships. The ventral vagal complex of the parasympathetic system wires us for connection. We are energetically and physiologically connecting with others via the nervous system and the subtle energy field and our chakras. We feel safe with other people when they are calm and grounded, and we don't feel safe around others when they are in a defensive pattern. So let's just face it, when we're in a survival pattern, things don't really go very well for us in life. When a client is in pattern, here's what it might look like. You might be familiar with some of this. Clients often late, or they miss appointments, they forgot to show up. They're always calling you or texting you for more support. They're very needy and they need even more support. They don't have boundaries around your time. They blame everyone else for not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing to get healthier. They blame you or your protocol when they don't get the results that they want. What can happen when you, the coach, are in your own survival pattern? Well, I have a really great example of one of the students that Laura and I've had in the past few years. She's a brilliant nutritional practitioner, and she had a client that simply would not follow her instructions. She keeps showing up for appointments and she keeps paying for lab work, but she was not following the protocol. And this was so frustrating to our student. And so our student ended up feeling really angry, and she felt like she was wasting her time dealing with this client. She was so frustrated that she found herself being cold and detached from her client. And then she ended up going into this whole cycle of feeling like a failure. She was blaming herself for not being able to get this client to follow the protocol and have success and have healing. And she was frankly really ready to quit her profession of being a nutrition coach. But after learning more about the patterns of defense that her client was in and healing her own pattern of defense, she had the awareness and the tools that she needed to help her client. And I'm happy to report that she is still practicing as a nutritional coach. So some more examples of how this might look if the coach is in pattern. Well, coaches and healers and therapists can take on their client's energy, take it on into their body enough that they even get sick. We can feel overly responsible for the client, feel like we're the one healing or fixing the client, and get cold or detached, like this student I was just sharing with you. We might withdraw or get resentful. We can end up behaving passively or passive aggressively with our clients, or isolate or shut them out. We can get angry. We might even give up and quit because we feel inadequate, or overly compromise because we don't feel like we're doing a good enough job. So now that we've kind of defined what the survival energy pattern is and what it like in clients, what it can look like in practitioners, I'm going to pass it over to Laura. She's going to go into great detail about these 5 survival energy patterns, how they developed, and what they look like.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. I think she might have named a lot of what some of you may be struggling with and may have dealt with and come across already in your own practice and gone, oh my God, what do I do now? You know, it's those situations where you look at your schedule for the day and you go, oh my God, there's that one coming at 3 o'clock. I can never know what to do with that one. Or the clients that you dread or you feel really stuck or challenged with. So there's a way out from that. And that's what we want to fill you in with these 5 survival patterns. So where do they even come from? So when clients are non-compliant, it's not because they don't want to be. We might think that that's the case, like they're digging in their heels and they're just too lazy or stupid or not disciplined enough. And it's none of those in actuality. So often it's the hidden trauma that they themselves are struggling with. And we want to help them out of that. So children adapt to their environment based on the skills available at their developmental age. And this is where this problem of the survival patterns began, something that happened to them in their developmental stages of life growing up. So with these skills, they created with whatever skills they had online at 3 years old or 5 years old or 6 months old, they created strategies to self-regulate their energy charge to prevent them from being overwhelmed, to stabilize themselves in whatever way they could with what they had on board at that developmental age. These skills then formed, when they used them often enough, they formed into patterns in their energy system. And I'm going to break this down more specifically in just a minute or two for you. Because the plasticity of young children is so strong, they learn to adapt quickly, and the patterns over time get hardwired and become habitual. So when we're kids and we're just trying to survive and no one is teaching us this stuff, intuitively, these adaptations are brilliant, actually. They're really stunningly creative and brilliant with what these kids have available, with what we had available when we were children, to be able to manage whatever we could. So the age available physical, emotional, mental characteristics and behavior patterns that worked well as children don't always work so great for us as adults. So let's go to the next slide. Kimberly, can you bring us to the next?
Yes, I am trying to get to the next slide, and for some reason, oh, there we go.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, so there are 5 energy patterns that all relate to 5 developmental stages that I was just referring to. And so if you see here, the leaving pattern, we'll look at the first one, the leaving pattern, where we learn how to send our energy up and out. How do we learn that? We learned that when we were babies, when we were infants, actually. And one of our parents held us in a way that was cold, detached, not sensitive, uncaring, didn't really emotionally connect with us. Maybe it was an unwanted birth. And so the baby, who is just all sense energy, feels that and goes out of their body, leaves this body because this touch might be harsh or uncomfortable or scary. So the only option they have when they're an infant is to go out of their body. So they learn that really well at that age. And then when something scary happens or cold or insensitive happens in my adult world, oh, I know what to do. I just leave my body. And I'll tell you more about what that looks like in our coping world in just a few minutes. Let's go a little bit older now. So now we're at about, this goes from about in the womb to about 4 months of age. So from 4 months to about 9 months, we're now in what's called the merging pattern. And in the merging pattern, the child did not get the experience of feeling really emotionally or perhaps physically, or usually both, completely full, completely filled up by the primary caretakers. Maybe mom was distracted because she was so overwhelmed with lots of other children or responsibilities. So there's this energy pull, come and feed me more, give me more attention, give me more love, feed me, fill me. So what happens when we get to adult land? I need to be filled by reaching out over here. I don't even know what the experience of feeling full inside myself is like. So my center needs to come from you. My sense of fullness needs to come from you. And we call this classically in our current age, codependency, codependent relationships, dependency and codependency. Then we go a little bit older. We go from about 9 months to 2.5 years, and we're in what's called the terrible twos. Now we have a little bit more facility online. We can start to talk a little bit. We walk, we're potty training. And this is the first stage of individuation, of really where the child learns how to say no, the delightful joy of going, no, finish your peas, no, eat your dinner, no, do you want to play? No, do you want to have something fun to do? No, right? So they're exercising their wonderful initial expression of individuation. But that is so disconcerting to the parent that they force the child to comply. And when the child is forced to comply, because they're dependent on this caretaker for their survival, they take all their individuating impulsivity and turn it in on themselves and hold it down. So they learn how to be sensitive to what this person wants, but they have no clue what they themselves are feeling, because all they know to survive is I have to comply with you in order to be safe. So take a deep breath, because some of this might be resonating for some of you. It might be triggering for some of you, but let's just begin to notice all of that. So then we go to the next developmental stage, probably about 2 to 4 years old, where we're really more agile. We can run, we can jump, we can play, we can speak, we can interact. And there's an unavailable, parent who is not setting boundaries that keep us safe from our own impulsivity. So I can take on tons of responsibility that I'm too young to be taking on, but I also don't have anybody to check me in how to hold or contain my energy. So what happens is with every impulse, when I become an adult, I express it, I pull that, I run that energy up my spine and I send it out and I try to control and I vent and I rage and I just discharge my energy and my emotionality out on everyone else, trying to control the situation that way. Then the last developmental stage is from about 5 to 7, and there's a correlating developmental age in puberty, in adolescence, where my love was given based on my performance, on if I did well, if I proved myself, if I followed the rules, and if I followed the guidelines. And if I got an A, this is a little minus over here. If I got an A minus, I got reprimanded. Love got withdrawn from me. So I really learned that to be acceptable, I had to earn approval. I had to earn love. It was conditional on my performance. And so I learned how to pull in all of my emotional energy and hold it really tight and really tense inside myself. And that's called the achiever pattern. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to take a little closer look now at the first developmental age, called the leaving pattern, and what we can do with that when we have a client who comes in. how are we going to know that that's what's going on for them? Well, they're not grounded, they're not present. They might have a faraway look in their eyes. So we're going to see, what do we do with that pattern? Let's go to the next slide. So why did it happen? So in utero and in infancy, something really scary happened. Maybe it was an unwanted pregnancy, but somehow they learned that it isn't safe to be here, to be in my body. And you can see in all of these little babies, their eyes have that fearful look, that scared look in the eyes. And again, the only way to feel safe is to come out of this body. So if my body isn't safe, I'll just energetically leave. Let's go to the next slide. So how does this look in adult land? Well, this might seem familiar to you. You space out. You get distracted easily. You're bored. You'd rather be in your own little world than connect with anybody else. So you can see, I love this slide because they're all in their own little world. Nobody's really aware or paying much attention to anybody else. And these are the people who are, totally fine being completely independent on their own. In fact, they usually would rather be alone than be with other people. They're spacey. They could have long monologues and you don't really have to even be paying attention. It doesn't make much difference. They space out, they disassociate, they leave their body because it's not really very safe to make connection. So this is how it can look like in us. Let's go to the next slide. So the self-sabotage impact that happens is you can get forgetful and spacey. You can feel scattered and unfocused, confused easily. You can feel insecure because of it. You might be somebody who bumps into things, who's always tripping over your own feet, and you hurt yourself a lot because you don't have a strong sense of your own physical body, of being in your physical body. It's hard to feel yourself. You feel tired, you lack motivation, you're lazy, you think of yourself as lazy and apathetic and careless. And it's hard to, this could be a lot of ADD happens here because they're not listening in present time because it's so easy for them to feel distracted. This is the self-sabotage impact. And again, it's wired in from early childhood. It's not because you want to be that way. Here's the impact on relationships. It creates mistrust. Because, you say you're going to show up somewhere and then you forget, or you get confused, or you show up at the wrong place. People misinterpret essential information because they're distracted so easily. Significant others get frustrated and like they're wasting their time with you, or they get short or impatient because they have to repeat themselves. And others don't get the best part of you. And there's a part of us that knows that. So let's go to the next slide. So here's the good news. Here's a way to help them stop it now. And if this is you that's struggling with this, these are things that you can do for yourself to stop and begin to change and heal that pattern. So the first thing is to get into your body. And even if it's just to use self-touch, and we have exercises that we teach in our certification program that actually walk you through how to begin to drop into an energetic, felt sense of being more fully present, more fully here in your body. But we can even just start with this simple exercise of using self-touch, looking at your own body and saying, I'm here, and feeling yourself. It might sound ridiculous or obvious, but for the person with this wounding, this is an incredibly impactful exercise that you can be doing with them. Simple, it could take 3 minutes to do it. And at the end of which you find them saying, oh my God, that made so much difference. I can't believe how I feel. I can feel myself now. And then the second thing you want to do if you're working with somebody who has this leaving pattern is you want to keep your energy really calm. You want to speak slowly. And if you're using physical contact with them, you want to move slowly. And you want to keep that contact soft and light and predictable. No startling, scary, sudden movements for them. They'll go out of their body. They'll feel frightened and leave. And they're going to focus on the energy behind your words more than the words themselves. So if you tell your client, you're doing a really good job, they're not going to feel that. You're going to need to soften your tone and speak gently to them. You're doing a really good job. You could say to them, you didn't do such a good job. And they're going to go, oh, tell me more, because you spoke to them in a tone that they can receive. So even little adjustments like this, as a coach, as a therapist, as a practitioner, these are going to help you make a big difference in how your client responds. So let's go to the next pattern, the next slide. This is the merging pattern, the number 2 of the 5. So the merging pattern, the sense of self is externalized. So my sense of self, I want to connect to you so that I can feel whole and full inside myself, because they really don't know what it feels like to feel full inside themselves, because that bonding, that feeling of fullness never got programmed in completely with their parents, their original family of origin. Let's go to the next slide. So what happened? There was a developmental need that wasn't met, and there was inconsistent love, inconsistent holding, and inconsistent nourishment. So for parents, say, for example, who didn't have their kids on a predictable schedule for eating, for nap time, for cuddling time, for bedtime, this created an insecurity in that child, in that baby. So the core need is, I'm hungry, feed me, hold me. And they have an innate, we have an innate survival need, ask, and demand. I want more. I want more than what you're giving me. If you go away when I don't feel full yet, I'm going to feel empty, and I'm going to reach out for that. I have a right to that demand. Fill me up. So when I make that demand, that innate natural demand as a baby, and it doesn't get met, then something bad happens. You left me before I felt full. And if it happens enough times, then I feel worse, but because I'm now programmed in to feel anxious, that it's predictable that you're going to leave me before I feel full, again and again and again. And so this feeling of anxiousness and anxiety, of emptiness and aloneness gets programmed in. So let's fast forward to adult land and see how that looks for us, that we struggle with in our codependency. We have a request in our relationship. So here's this grown-up adult, but she feels like this inside. And so if you're sitting with a friend who's needy and who's pulling at you and you feel annoyed by that, try to remember inside, she feels like this. She feels like a baby. And that feels really vulnerable and really helpless. And she's going to be pulling at this person, and that's going to just drive them away even more. So then that escalates to, okay, if you leave when I'm not filled up, and I'm still trying to get that feeling of fullness now in my adult relationships, because it never happened when I was little, I'm mad. I'm mad at you. I'm mad at you. So then we turn around to our lovers, our friends, our spouses, whoever it is, and we yell at them, and that drives them away even further. So the very thing that we're trying to heal, we exacerbate. We engender the opposite response from what we really want, which is fill me up, which of course is not the job of our significant other. It's the job of our family of origin. When that doesn't happen, it becomes the job of our therapist or our health community, or wherever we can begin to heal that part for ourselves. And then the third step is, if I still don't get the response I need, I go into collapse, I go into shutdown, and I feel this utter deprivation and aloneness, which is just so painful. So let's go see what we can do about it on the next slide. So the self-sabotage impact is this deep feeling of insecurity, low self-esteem. You can't feel your own core. You feel unfulfilled, nervous, and anxious. The relationship impact is our partners, our friends, our significant others feel like you're clinging on me, you're too needy. It repels significant others. It feels like there's weak boundaries, and then you find yourself always overgiving, and maybe you become passive aggressive and indirect in your request. So what can we do to stop this now? Let's go to the next slide. We need to have, as the practitioner, as the coach, as the therapist, open-hearted eye contact, physical contact, if it's appropriate, physical contact, if you're in person with the person, and tons of reassurance. You're doing a good job. Everything is okay. I still love you, even though I need alone time. Just give them some predictability. I need a half an hour of my own time. I promise you I'll be back. Be reliable for them. Show up when you do. These are all things that will help them to relax and begin to focus inward. This is me, that is you. We want to help define. There's an exercise we teach in the certification program, which really helps them feel their own sense of self as separate from you and begin to explore and have an internal felt sense of themselves. This is so crucial for them to heal. And then the third option is to stay connected and hold a space for them to find themselves and begin to feel their own feelings. And there's lots of ways to do this, where we gently, slowly help them come into a sense of themselves. And this takes time, but it's absolutely doable. And one of the most challenging things for adults is ending a codependent relationship. It's so painful, but this is where so often this merging pattern is rooted in its origins. Okay, let's go to the next pattern. Number 3, the endurer pattern. So the problem is the energy is stuck. They pull their energy in and hold it down. And oftentimes you'll see that these physical body shapes that we're depicting in these pictures is also not an accident. These are generic. They're not, it doesn't mean you have to look like this to have this pattern, but they're very often, it will show up with this kind of building up of a cushion to, because I'm so used to pulling my energy in and down and not moving it. So there'll be like a feeling of stagnation. Let's go to the next slide. So why does it happen that way? Oftentimes the parents who create this kind of pattern for their children do it because their will was broken when they were young, and so they fear their child's self-will. So the only way that they know how to control their child's will in order to feel safe from their child's vehement expressions as they come into their individuation process is through domination and over control and teaching them to repress and hold their energy in. So that's what's happening here with these very strong-willed parents. Let's go to the next slide. So what happens when we become adults? So we're going to focus on this is the adult from this parent here, who now is living with guilt, shame, boundary confusion, self-sabotage, being outwardly compliant and inwardly resistant. And for her to express herself would feel like she's absolutely being humiliated. So these are people who in their adult life are very, you could say, hold their sense of emotional expression in a lot. They don't emote too big. They're very subtle about how they express their feelings, because this is the kind of parenting messages they got. I own you and everything that you do. I know what's best for you. You sure don't. So what does that leave the adult child with? I'm a loser and a failure. If I disappoint her, she won't love me. I'll hurt myself because you can't get that part of me. And that's the only way I can have a sense of individuation. So these might be people who do cutting, who cut themselves, who do other forms of self-sabotage, because it's their one freedom of self-expression that they can secretly, quietly have, where it's safe for them to rebel. I'll rebel against you by hurting myself. So take a deep breath. These are painful to hear. I know that. And you might be relating again to some of these or know people who struggle with this stuff. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, the problem is stuck energy. So the self-sabotage impact is lethargy. They feel immobilized. They withhold their anger. They turn it inward on themselves because that's the only safe way to express anger. They were punished for expressing anger. They become moody or avoidant or both, usually both. They hold on to resentment. The relationship impact is it creates distance. Every time someone gets close to you who has this enduring pattern, if they feel that there's a conflict brewing between you, they'll just go and hide away. They won't want to confront at all. They would rather disconnect and pull away from you. Because if they express themselves, it'll come out oftentimes in a tirade of anger, uncontrollable anger, and then they'll feel humiliated. They won't even be as concerned about you as they will about feeling that they've humiliated themselves. They have poor boundaries. They'll invade others because they don't really have a sense of clear boundaries, and they feel invaded and suffocated easily, and they don't know what it is, how to even recognize or express other people's boundaries. This pattern can also happen a lot when there's been sexual abuse and boundary invasion in that way, or other forms of boundary invasion. So let's go to the next slide. How to stop it now. It's so interesting because a lot of people in adult land, when they have this pattern, they so often will say no to every offer, just like the terrible twos, right? They wanted to practice saying no. So you might be married to somebody who goes to you and say, hey, want to go out to dinner? Yeah, okay. Well, where do you want to go? I don't know. You pick, And then when you get there, they're sulking, right? Or they'll just say no to everything but if you sit with it long enough and if you give them time and if you give them space, very often their no will be followed by a yes. But they have to find that yes from within themselves in their own space and time. So this requires patience, it requires more time. They're going to usually move at a slower pace than you might be comfortable with, or you might think you're not making any progress with this client. They're not making any progress, they're stuck. But there's a lot of processing going on inside of them when you give them choices, and if you give them time to reflect on how they want to proceed and the pace that feels right for them. So let's go to the next slide. So we're now at the challenger defender. And the challenger defender is the person who runs their energy up, who gets surged with energy that's so strong and so powerful, they can't contain it and they just discharge it out at you or anybody. So lots of CEOs, lots of political leaders, as you see from all the politics that we have, being broadcast everywhere. So much energy that charge runs up and they can't contain it and they discharge it out at whoever's around. The problem is the good news is they have a lot of power, but the bad news is it's not connected to their heart. So let's go to the next slide and see what happened there. Okay, so why did this originate this way? Parents can't stay connected to their child's intense emotions. The parent feels threatened by it. The parent feels intimidated by their child's charge. And so the parents collapsed and gave into their child's demands. And this is really like a betrayal to the child because they're too little to be in charge. And so it breaks a kind of trust. You can't make me, right? They want to challenge that authority, but they need you to win. I'll fight you. I want to fight you, but I need you to win. And I need you to make me feel safe to be able to fight, and give me safe boundaries and teach me how to discharge my energy, but without hurting myself, without hurting other people. That's what they need. And this is really tough for a lot of parents to do because this is a very charged up stage. They're a little bigger. They can hurt you when they kick or bite. So we have to find, how do we hold those boundaries, but with love? Okay, and firmness and clarity. So let's go to the next slide. So forms of energy release, when we become adults, they pull the energy up and out. There's a high charge, a buildup, an explosion. Once they discharge, they feel better, but then you've made your secretary cry. But they're fine. So there's an outward projecting of that energy. So let's go to the next slide. So the self-sabotage impact is a feeling of unbalanced. They're not grounded in their body. They know they're not balanced. They know they're not grounded, but they They put their focus on controlling you out there so that they don't have to deal with that. There's a mistrust. They lack depth because of that. They create distance from other people because people are oftentimes afraid of them. The relationship impact, I could say so much more about that, but I'm not going to talk politics right now. So relationship impact, it scares and repels people away from you. It creates divisiveness and chaos. It causes emotional hurt and pain. So how do we stop this now? We need to be able to stay present when that strong charge shows up in our office. And if you're a leaving pattern yourself, that could be hard for you to do. That could be challenging for you to do. How do I learn how to do that? How do I stay present in my own body and keep myself strong so that I can be a firm, solid presence for this person who really does want and need my help? I need to be able to match their power and energy charge, but with an open heart, because that's what they did not get. They didn't get the power to be met with an open, caring, loving heart. And that, again, these are skills that we teach in the certification program. But this, you can begin already to experiment and explore with, how do I do that? How can I do that? So one of the ways you can do that is to focus on the vulnerable grain of truth beneath their rant. So they might say 10 things that aren't true, but one thing that has a little bit of truth, you're going to focus on that grain of truth and acknowledge that for them and say, yeah, you're right. You're right. I could have given you more detail in the intake form than what I gave you, for example, let's just say, right? And you're so right. And I can really hear your disappointment about that. They might have been screaming about it, but you're going to just acknowledge and validate the grain of truth. And if you can do that with somebody who's ranting and not be afraid of that energy, you're going to immediately calm down. They're going to immediately soften. But it's not out of fear. It's not like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't do that for you. It's not there. It's like, yeah, I get it. I hear you. I missed that for you. We meet them with power, but with validation and with true care. So the last pattern is the rigid, or sometimes we call it the achiever pattern. So the problem is rigid perfectionism. Let's go to the next. And we contain and pull our energy in so that we can be perfect. And when we do that, we get really tight and really tense inside. And we have a really hard time feeling our core, soft, loving, hearted, essential self when we do that. Let's go to the next slide. Why? What's the cause of this pattern? Their experience of reality was negated or minimized, and external rules and performance and values were imposed in order to receive love. So I know what to do. I'll make my room absolutely sparkling clean, and then mommy will be so proud of me and happy with me and love me. And criticism equals caring. I'm being reprimanded. I'm listening politely. I'm going to do it better next time, Mom. So there's this, again, again, each of these, there's so much sadness to this, right? We really feel the pain that's underneath this call for perfectionism. Let's go to the next slide. So forms of energy expression we suppress because we learn, oh, some of your sensations, some of your emotions, they're incorrect. They're not appropriate. Don't feel those feelings. They're messy. Don't ever cry in public. Don't ever cry at a meeting. Don't ever lose control. Don't show too much feeling, right? So we suppress incorrect emotions or sensations. And we organize to control the environment because that's what makes me feel safe. Everything has its place. Everything's in order. We'll do it by the book. We look up our theories, or, for therapists who have this, we're going to go refer to our, DSM-5 or 6 or whatever, what number we're on now, and find the diagnosis. And, oh, you fit this, this, and this, nice and neat and tidy. We're going to constrict and pull in, and we're going to do it perfectly. Let's go to the next slide. So the self-sabotage impact is that I feel anxious. I feel empty. These are people who look at someone who does cry, and once they're past the judgment of them crying, they actually feel envious. They actually wish that they could feel like that person feels. They wish that they could love to the depth that that person loves. They feel disconnected from their emotions, and they create distance and superficiality. The relationship impact is it lacks authenticity, it lacks a feeling of connection, and it engenders hidden agendas, affairs and secrets and things like that. They are great secret keepers, and they're great at having affairs because they're great secret keepers. As long as it looks good on the outside, I can compartmentalize really well. Let's go to the next slide. So how to stop it now? Choose your words carefully, because they choose their words carefully. When they submit their intake form to you, you can be sure they've gone over it 5 times. Everything is perfectly expressed. There's no spelling errors. It's nice and neat and tidy and easy to read. They're going to be on time, probably a few minutes early, but not too early because that wouldn't be appropriate. So this is the rigid achiever pattern. They're going to validate. So what you need to do as the practitioner, as the coach, is validate and agree with them where you can, because this helps them feel safe. So we want to start to, how they're going to feel connected to you is through feeling safe, and then listen for and respond to the hidden need or emotional feeling that's beneath their complaint. Okay, so I think we're going to just do a quick recap here. I think you are not your pattern. You use your pattern to manage when you feel overwhelmed or out of control. You don't lose the gifts that are inherent in each pattern, and there are actually natural, beautiful gifts that are inherent that you learn to help you cope and adapt when you were young, to help you heal. And healing is becoming consciously aware of your state and your pattern, and then choosing the most effective strategy for the present moment when you feel overcharged. We build resiliency in the nervous system to increase tolerance and an ability to regulate our system. So I'm going to bat it back to you, Kimberly, and she's going to take us, I think, from here.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Laura, for that beautiful overview. Very short. This information, we could go hours and hours and hours into each one of these patterns. So it was just a very brief overview, but you did a great job of that brief overview. So now I want you guys to think about this. Can you recognize yourself in any of those patterns? Do you recognize your primary pattern? For instance, do you feel insecure and lack of confidence about your own expertise? Do you feel overly responsible and then overgive of your time? Do you blame the client for non-compliance and respond passive-aggressively? Do you cover up your fear of being wrong? Maybe even cover it up with anger? Or do you struggle with imposter syndrome? What if you could embody open-hearted power? Self-regulate when a disappointed client blames you. Express anger kindly with an open heart. Hold strong and healthy boundaries. Have a community to share challenges and get professional support. Or receive objective feedback with colleagues so that you can grow. Excuse me. Well, you've been introduced to reasons why and how you've gotten stuck, how these patterns may have stopped you or your clients from responding effectively. You may be seeking a successful, consistent system to help your clients once and for all break their self-sabotaging patterns. There is a way to implement what you have heard today. Actually, there's 2 paths that you can take from here. Path number 1 would be to take the information that we've just given you and go at it alone with what you've learned today. Or path 2, which is to allow us to be your guide and mentor. There is a system that leads to transformation. The Transpersonal Energy Healing 10-step system to repattern your life force energy. Now that the hidden reasons are revealed that explain your client's tendency to self-sabotage and your tendency to self-sabotage as well, it's time to repattern it. And you don't have to do that alone. We created this 10-month, 10-step coaching certification training to help clients undo the root cause of their survival energy pattern. And next, Laura is actually going to walk us through the 10 steps in our 10-step system.
Okay, so this is the 10 steps in a nutshell, that we are teaching in the program so that you just get a glimpse of what the skills are that you would learn. Step number one is how to establish yourself in your essential self, how to listen and reflect your client, mirror significant gestures and emotions, and really to keep your ego out of the way, which is part of the problem. Like when you go to a professional and you sit there with them and you so often feel like, did they really even hear anything I just said? And so there's a way of listening from our essential self that enables you to do that. Step two is to open your energy system. This is your chakra energy system. And then slow down time to embody physical and emotional sensations. So we're teaching ourselves and our clients to sense into their energy body in a very different way. Step three is to regulate the energy of trauma, to visualize the energy of the trauma history, and actually find where it lives in your body, and then be able to dwell in those visceral sensations so that we can begin to repattern it. Step four is to safely embody that emotional energy that felt so scary to us in our childhood. It's now safe. We're adults now. Those same threats are not there anymore. So we can begin to allow buried subconscious emotions to rise and fully feel and release them in present time. Step five is to identify the root cause, where this came from. And this tracks into the 5 survival energy patterns, developmental stages we just talked about, when these feelings originated in the past, and then we can begin to, and how we can begin to safely feel them in present time. Step 6 is to deepen to the sensate level, to learn to use an art of inquiry. So this is an art of asking questions that come directly from the client's inner core, not from you imposing questions on the client. And then an energy vocabulary that helps you to take those questions deep, to help them go deeper, to get to the root cause. Step 7 is there's a natural resistance that shows up in every session when we get close to the root cause of a trauma. So often we feel like, okay, that's enough. I don't want to go any further. I'm not taking a look at that. It's too ugly. It's too nasty. It's too dirty. I'm not going there. And this is the real juncture that's so important in the therapeutic healing process, where we have to follow the direction of that negative resistance to its source point, because that's where the gem, the golden healing happens. Step 8 is to integrate childhood core beliefs into the adult self. And so we explore and expand the original avoidant life force sensation patterns. Step 9 is now it's safe to connect. Now that we have felt that life force that was so buried or distorted or stuck, we discover, wow, I can actually feel this and I didn't die. And I can make connection with you and feel all this aliveness that's flooding through my body. So they can connect their inner process now to their outer relationships. And then we integrate step 10, integrate and summarize the work so that there's a left brain and a right brain integration. These 10 steps were born out of decades of research and practice that Kimberly and I put together, that coalesced so many different modalities that ended up in this 10-step paradigm. So back to you, Kimberly.
Thanks, Laura. So this system really will teach you how to help your clients consistently transform their self-sabotaging energy patterns. It really is systematic, it's repeatable, and it really does work. And there's so many great things here. You're not going to have to spend years in traditional training in order to unwind the root cause of trauma patterns that have kept your clients locked up in this misery. You'll have 10 concrete steps that you can consistently implement to help clients have a breakthrough. The system is so effective, it can be used with clients in person or virtually, and you'll know how to respond when faced with challenging clients, and you'll no longer be left feeling stuck or lost. I always feel like I have something in my back pocket that I can pull out. I never feel at a loss of how to support a client. Even when really challenging situations come up, having these 10 steps gives me this confidence that I can stay grounded and I can stay regulated so the client stays feeling safe with me, and I have these tools to implement with them. So my confidence is so strong no matter what shows up in my office with a client. So I want to share what's included with our program. You get 10 live once monthly master classes. In each live Zoom session with Laura, myself, and our other master teacher, Lisa Lewis, you'll participate in interactive experiential skills, guided meditations, grounding, and centering exercises. You'll see live demonstrations of the work in action, and you'll get live Q&A time. That has a $4,688 value. You also get 6 one-hour personal integration sessions. So under the guidance of a certified professional transpersonal energy healing practitioner, you'll get 6 individual private sessions in transpersonal energy healing. So this is a healing process for yourself as well, and that's a $900 value. You're going to get up to 1 year membership in our Heal Your Survival Pattern membership group. Each week, you'll have the opportunity to choose to participate in live classes that are led by the master teachers in conscious eating, self-care, and nourishment. And we'll be doing energy perception exercises where you're really going to be learning how to grow your ability to perceive and work with energy. And that's a $468 value. And you also get 5 20-minute personal mentorship sessions. Your transpersonal energy healing practitioner will include 5 20-minute mentorship sessions with you to individually support you throughout your entire certification program, and that is a $250 value. So altogether, you get 10 live master classes, 6 personal healing sessions with a certified practitioner, 1 year membership in our group, 5 personal mentorship sessions, and we're also offering the bonus that you can repeat all of the live master classes the following year so that you have the opportunity to continue to practice these foundational skills. And this has a value of almost $11,000, but right now our transpersonal energy healing certification program tuition is only $4,500. And actually, right now we have our beta launch one-time special offer. This is the first time that Laura and I are offering this program on our new platform. So we're offering the people who enroll in our beta launch a discounted price of only $2,700. Now, we have been excuse me, we have had the deadline of July 25th for this beta launch, but because so many of you just found out about us over this past weekend, we wanted to give you the opportunity to have a discovery call with us and learn more about us and to see if this is a right fit for you. So we have a free 30-minute discovery call that you can connect with us to see more about the program and see if this is a fit for you at this time. So we are going to extend our deadline and our schedule a free discovery calls all this week to help accommodate you. If you schedule a discovery call and enroll by Monday, August 1st, we will honor the beta launch discount of only $2,700.